And I'll now hand over to Sue Sayer, the founder and director of the Seal Research Trust, to say a few words and start us off.
Lovely, thank you very much. I'm just going to share my screen. Thank you very much for introducing our webinar tonight. We're very excited to be with everybody and to have everybody on the call. Unfortunately, I can't see you while I'm talking, but nevertheless, I know you're there. And I'm presenting most of the slides tonight, so I probably won't be able to see very much of you till the end. So welcome to our webinar on seals. We're delighted to have a fantastic group of speakers who are all real experts in their field, sharing their knowledge about seals from the Southwest from 2023. And without further ado, I'm going to tell you this is the running order. So we're going to start with rescues, onto post-mortems, and then we're going to go around the region from Dorset through South Devon. I'm going to talk about conservation actions up the north coast to Pentyre and to North Devon, and then we'll do a summary and questions afterwards. So first presenter tonight is Dan Jarvis. Do you want to say anything, Dan, before we play the film?
Yeah, just a brief one on the rescue side of things, just to touch on the seal pups from the last, the last winter actually, so I'm slightly breaking the format as it's not strictly 2023. But from our season for pups being rescued, that started in 2023 and of course runs through the winter into 2024. We actually in the Southwest had 5 common seals that were rescued, so that's quite unusual for us down here. We do get the odd 1 or 2 every now and again, but 5 is a busy year for common seals. And they were rescued mainly at the beginning of the season in sort of August, September sort of time, whereas they're normally born more around June, July. So we got some stragglers from somewhere. We don't quite know where they were born, so it's quite interesting that they do continue turning up here. Whereas 10 years ago, this would be a once in a blue moon sort of event, but it's a bit more commonplace now. But touching on our grey seals, this winter for us at the BDMLR Cornwall Seal Hospital, we took in 116 seals. So I think it's off the top of my head our 4th busiest season that we've had since we've operated some form of seal hospital or seal unit over the last 11 years. And we've got a fantastic team of volunteers. There's about 65 of them who are regularly helping look after those seals in our unit with myself and our head veterinary consultant, Natalie, who both work for the charity, managing that team and managing all of the animals, with a few other veterinary personnel as well, of course, helping out. Specifically Zoe as well. I'm not sure if you're here tonight, Zoe, but she's been our relief vet cover this winter and has been fantastic. So I really just can't thank everyone enough for all of their contributions in helping us get through this latest season. In the period from when we started in August, September through to December, we were actually on course for our busiest season on record, both in terms of the volume of call-outs that we've received in the Southwest, but also the number of seals that were being admitted for rehabilitation as well. But then after New Year, things petered out fairly quickly, which is quite nice. It felt like a season from 10 years ago before we started having all the horrible storms and everything. So it's actually the storms that largely affected us in the first half of the season. So the second half of the season's felt a little bit old school in a way, but we've had the drip feed of seals still coming in right up until this month, but we seem to be sort of back on top of things again now. But one thing that we don't often get hands-on with are entangled adult seals, and this is what our film is about tonight. So it's an animal that you've probably heard about already called Wings, and the story will tell everything that you need to know about this one, so I'm not really going to say much more than that. So I'll leave it over to you now, Sue, to present the film. So hopefully you can see and hear it okay, and enjoy.
The Seal Research Trust is a seal citizen science photo ID network in the Southwest UK, with over 12,000 different seals in our catalogues built up over 24 years. We use this information to write peer-reviewed papers to inform conservation. We first met Wings in 2003 and have seen her over 300 times since, as a habituated seal fed in St Ives Harbour since 2007, especially during the summer. This has changed her behaviour. At high tide between April and October, she follows boats routinely and becomes food obsessed and very stressed. This has led to boat strikes, propeller cuts, entanglement in hooks and antisocial behaviour. Sadly, in July 2023, aged 25, Wings had an encounter with a flying ring. The Seal Alliance have been raising awareness of the dangers of these flying rings, and 27 different seals in the UK have been recorded in them, with evidence of fatal consequences for some.
In our role at British Divers Marine Life Rescue, we rarely have an opportunity to catch and disentangle healthy adult seals, as the majority of places they haul out are often inaccessible. However, with Wings we had an opportunity to use her habituated behaviour to our advantage by using fish as a lure to try something new. Plan A was to attempt direct physical removal by luring her close to a boat. From there we would get her to lunge upwards out of the water for the fish, while one of our team tried to grab the ring. Due to it being summer, the operation was conducted in front of several hundred onlookers. Frustratingly, after a few attempts and successfully getting hands-on with the ring, it became clear that it was already too firmly wedged around her neck, and Wings was becoming evasive. We needed a plan B.
The Cornish Seal Sanctuary were called in to assist with Plan B, which needed a larger team and an adult seal-sized cage, which we were able to provide. The aim this time was to use the same luring technique with the fish to get her to go into the tunnel in the harbour structure itself, which is blocked off at one end except for a small gap. We've positioned the crush cage and the team with the herdboards at the entrance to the tunnel, and we waited patiently while Wings acclimatised to going in and out. We took our opportunity and the team with the herdboards rushed across the entrance to block Wings' exit. As we expected, Wings tested our herdboard barrier to try and find a way out of the tunnel, and not finding one, she went to the back of the tunnel where she noticed the gap. To our surprise, she showed us that she could actually fit through it and began to climb up to escape. But luckily one of the team thought really quickly, ran to the back of the tunnel with their herdboard and distracted her long enough for her to slip back down and direct her towards the opening. At the end of the barrier we had the cage placed, and the light at the end of that cage I think must have given her a hope that there was an escape route, so she really calmly just went straight into the cage.
there, we were able to clip away the frisbee ring with a pair of bolt cutters and remove it from around her neck. We found from a quick assessment that she was completely uninjured. Once everyone was standing back now, we were able to open the cage door and release wings.
Okay, secure at this end. Which end do you want to open? Ready? Yeah.
We wondered if the experience would put her off coming back to the harbour and being hand-fed fish again. However, within just a few days, she was back. It also hasn't put people off trying to feed her and the other habituated seals either, in spite of ongoing efforts over the years by all organisations involved to stop this from happening. Entanglement in flying rings is a recent and increasing issue in the UK and other parts of the world. Seal Alliance campaigners in the UK are actively trying to encourage consumers to not buy them and retailers to stop stocking them in favour of solid disc frisbees that at least can't entangle wildlife. So please join us in saying no to the O.
So that's a fairly unusual situation for us to be able to get hands-on with adult seals here in the southwest, as a lot of the places they haul out are difficult for us to get to and deal with them. But our colleagues over at Horsey Beach in Norfolk, the Friends at Horsey Seals team, they have lovely big flat open sandy beaches, and they do have a number of successful rescues of adult seals there, including some in flying rings and other marine litter, which you can see examples of here. And very recently, or just in the last week, in fact, through the Seal Alliance, which is a coalition of seal conservation and rescue groups around the UK and a bit beyond as well, have come together to launch this petition to ban the sale of flying rings here. So we'd really encourage everybody on the to please support our petition here. QR code, and I'm sure we can put the link in the chat as well for people to click on, and you'll see it being promoted regularly now over the next 6 months or so, which is a fantastic effort for the whole. So I think that's it from me, and
Sorry, Sue, you're just on mute.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can now.
I don't know, I did unmute myself. Anyway, I can see that James is here, so I will start sharing my screen and let James take over.
Thanks, Sue. I think this follows on quite nicely from what we just heard, because Sue and I decided that we would talk a little bit about bycatch in seals and essentially what we found out from post-mortem examinations of seals. But first of all, this has been really highlighted last year in October when we had this seal pup found entangled in nets in St Ives Harbour. And unfortunately, I can't see the top of my screen because of a black bar across it, but hopefully I can see what I'm meant to be reading. This animal was clearly caught up in nets, which had been left over the side of a fishing boat in the harbour. Unfortunately, it died, it had drowned, and you can see these rather nasty lesions on its teeth and on its chin. And there was sand in the trachea, which are pretty consistent with drowning. So Sue moved on quite quickly from the initial title slide, sorry, Sue. But it just really, I just wanted to try and point out what we're seeing with bicaught animals as far as post-mortem examinations are concerned, but also really how what we're looking at post-mortem is really only the tip of the iceberg of the problem. So essentially there are two types of fisheries interactions. One is peracute underwater entrapment, which I'll refer to as PUE going forward. This is a classic bycatch where animals rapidly die in active fishing gear. And the second is entanglement. And you just had a good example of that in flying rings, in the O-rings, but also we see a lot of cases of entanglement in discarded fishing gear, and also in animals potentially that have been found alive in active fishing gear and partially cut free. Sorry, Sue, next one on, thank you. So in total, we've only examined we've only diagnosed 19 cases of seal fishes interaction over a 20-year period, which is about 7% of the PMEs that we've carried out. And the majority of those have been PUE cases, but we've had a few noticeable entanglement cases that have come in for PM, which I'll talk about a little bit in a minute. But starting off with the PUE cases. Thanks, Sue.
Sorry.
That's all right. We had 5 known cases of PUE, and 2 of these have been observed actually hauled in nets. Chris Lowe, back in some time ago now, but we'll see it in the next slide, alerted me to these 2 animals which he got in for PME. And then 3 animals were found wrapped in nets with gross and histopathological lesions that were consistent with PUE as opposed to chronic entanglement. So we were known cases of PUE. So this is one of the examples of a known PUE case. In fact, it was 2 male grey seal molters that were hauled in a net off Guinea Bears Beach back in January 2016. And the lesions that we found on these animals, both externally and internally, were very useful for us to be able to almost have like control material to know what to expect to find in PUE cases. So we had the expression abrasions around the muzzle and the eyelids and the foreflipper webbing, distended veins, and persistent froth in the airways and really congested lungs. Thanks, Sue. And this is a second case. This animal was actually found in the net, but not actually being hauled, but was found wrapped in the net. The animal came in without the net on, but there were still very clear linear marks on the pelage and the gums and wounds on the foreflipper webbing and persistent froth in the airways and congested lungs. So this animal was found off Main Porth back in March 2017 by British divers. So this was a second case of known PUE. The difficulty comes when it comes to what we call inferred PUE, so where we make a judgment on the basis of what we found that this is a case of PUE. And that's particularly difficult in seals compared to cetaceans because the very nature of their pelage, their fur, means that the characteristic marks, linear marks, encircling wounds that we see in the skin of cetaceans aren't found to the same extent in seals. So we have to go on what we saw in those known cases of PUE and what's also been recorded in the literature as being good diagnostic tools, if you like, for diagnosing PUE. So here are the list of findings in animals with known PUE, and you can see that the majority of the seals that we inferred as being cases of PUE had these characteristic findings, but only 4 out of the 9 had linear marks in the pelage. Thanks, Sue. So just a few photos to illustrate this. The top right-hand one, unfortunately, I decided opening this pup up before we took the photo, but hopefully you can see the linear marks running transversely across the neck and the ventral neck. Got the engorged blood vessels in the top left-hand picture. We've got the reddening of the tracheal mucosa in the bottom left-hand picture, and then we've got this persistent froth in the airways, in the trachea in the middle, and in the bronchial on the right-hand side, and then the really red congested lungs, which are characteristic findings in PUE cases. I think entanglement is much more dramatic and really points out the welfare issues associated with both with marine debris and potentially with animals being cut free from active fishing gear. This animal was a sub-adult male found dead at Mousehole back in 2014. It was in very poor body condition and had this large granulating wound around its neck, over which the skin was gradually encroaching. And you can see these strands of monofilament net emerging from sinuses in that wound. And when we dissected down around the neck, we found that there was still a complete loop of monofilament net right around the neck of this animal, which would have had a massive effect in terms of the mobility of the animal's neck, which, as you all know, is very important in terms of the prehension of the prey. So would have been a major contributing factor to the poor condition of this animal. Thanks, Sue. This is a second case, a young Malta back in January 2018 at Long Rock, which had 3 kilos of trammel net, rope and floats wrapped around it, had this large wound on the back of its neck, which would have been consistent with the animal dragging the net underneath itself as it moves across the shore. And then we found shingle in the glottis, that's up around the beginning of the airway, at the back of the throat, and water in the airways, which suggested the animal probably ended up drowning in the surf, which is hardly surprising when its movement is so restricted by this amount of material. Thanks, Sue. But this is really the most dramatic case that we've seen over the years. Back in 2019 at Trebarwith Strand, this juvenile male grey seal, and this animal was actually observed with this net around it 2 weeks prior to the animal being found dead on the shore, but unfortunately couldn't be caught up. This animal essentially was carrying its own body weight in net. And when it died, the net was removed and this animal came in for post-mortem examination. Now, this wound is a bit more dramatic than it would have been in real life because there was some post-mortem breakdown of the muscle that had been damaged by the net, which caused it to separate as it has, but it was still a nasty chronic wound of at least 2 to 3 weeks duration. So this animal went through prolonged suffering, as did the other animals that have been entangled over a period of time. So post-mortem examinations certainly illustrate the welfare of bycatch, but they really don't illustrate the true extent of the problem in terms of numbers. And the reasons for this are threefold. First of all, a bicolt seal may never strand. It may never come ashore. Secondly, even if it does come ashore, it may not be submitted for post-mortem examination. We've tended to focus perhaps too much on post-mortem examining live stranded seal pups that have died relatively shortly afterwards or an early rehabilitation. Perhaps more than we should have done over the years. And bicort animals also may be too decomposed and therefore overlooked for post-mortem examination. However, even if a stranded bicort seal was submitted for PME, the reasons I've already mentioned, the diagnosis can be incredibly difficult if there are no external signs. So it may have underestimated the number of bicort seals we've seen. So the Sea Mammal Research Unit, through the Scientific Committee on Seals, reports annually to DEFRA, and their estimates are of around 400 to 600 seals caught annually in the UK waters. The majority of these are believed to be juvenile greys, caught in particularly in set nets, of which the majority occur in the southwest UK and Ireland, which is called the ISIS Region 7, which Cornwall was very much part of. However, by their own acknowledgements, the sampling effort for bycatch estimates is not uniform and is known to be inadequate around our part of the world, around South Wales. And furthermore, it doesn't include non-UK vessels, so it's quite clearly an underestimate. Thanks, Sue. It's clear that as far as entanglement is concerned, we can get some quite useful data on the potential number of animals that are implicated in this beautiful bit of work done by people you will recognise in Cornwall back in 2004 to 2008, published in the Marine Pollution Bulletin in 2012, illustrated this. So they obviously carried out some observations at one hall outside of North Cornwall and established an annual mean entanglement rate of 3.5 to 5%. So 3.5 to 5% of all seals noted were found to be entangled. That's a large number of seals. And of these, 15 cases were where entangling debris was visible, i.e. you could actually make out what was entangling it. 40 were entangled in fisheries material. So the vast majority were down to fisheries material. And furthermore, the maximum capture rates for entangled seals was significantly less than that for non-entangled seals, suggesting an increased mortality rate for entangled seals, which is what one would expect. So in summary, PMEs certainly highlight the welfare concerns of seal bycatch, but they give us no idea about the numbers implicated, numbers actually occurring. Even the best estimates of seal bycatch are likely to be underestimates, and really the true extent of bycatch of seals and other marine mammals will only be achieved through improved monitoring of fishing operations. Thanks. And I want to say thanks to everybody who helps with this work. I couldn't do it without so many volunteers, Cornwall Marine Pathology team, Cornwall Wildlife Trust, Marine Strandings Network, British Divers Marine Life Rescue, and of course the Seal Research Trust, who assists us with our work. So thank you, everybody. And that's me done.
Thank you very much. And thanks for your insightful work for all those post-mortems, because we can learn more from dead seals than we can from live ones in lots of ways. So that was really excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, over to Sarah Hodgson from the Dorset Seal Project. Sarah works for the Dorset Wildlife Trust, and it's an honour to be presenting with her.
Thanks very much, Sue. Hi, everyone. So I've been working on the Dorset Seal Project for the last 10 years. So I just wanted to give a quick summary about some of the things we've learned about seals in Dorset over the past decade, as well as a quick roundup of what happened last year. So we launched the project back in 2014, just because we were intrigued to learn more about seals in Dorset. We had regular sightings of seals being reported to us, but we did a bit more research and discovered that not many people were collating the data or had done an awful lot of research on seals in Dorset before. So we decided that it was a perfect opportunity for us to collect sightings data and also develop a photo ID catalogue, whilst alongside raising awareness about these amazing animals, educating people, and also promoting responsible seal watching practices. So since starting the project, we've recorded 1,570 seal sightings in Dorset up to the end of 2023. As you can see from the bar graph, the numbers sort of steadily increased year on year. They took a slight downturn in 2018 and 2019, and then picked up again in 2020 and 2021, which was quite surprising because that was the COVID years, although perhaps that meant that there were more people out and about who were likely to spot them. It should be noted that these sightings data it's not based on effort-based surveys. This is just casual sightings data sent in by members of the public, so can't really be used to sort of identify trends or imply any sort of population changes in population figures. In terms of species, 60% of seal sightings that get reported to us are of grey seals, 19% are harbour seals or common seals, and the remaining 21% were not identified to species. We get grey seals popping up pretty much anywhere along the Dorset coast, whereas most of the common seal sightings are restricted to a few sites. We know that seals are present along the Dorset coast all year round. We do tend to get more sightings reported in August, but again, that is probably more of a reflection that there are more people out and about along the coast or on the water. And from that data that we've collected, we share that with other organisations such as Natural England, Southern IFCA, all harbour commissioners, to sort of assist with management plans and things like that. So studying a highly mobile marine mammal that spends the vast majority of their time in the water can be very challenging, and there are only small windows of opportunity when they're at the surface or hauled out that we can actually observe and learn more about them. So one non-invasive technique that we've been using is photo identification. So you're probably aware that seals have individual and unique sort of sets of markings and patterns in their fur, which they retain throughout their lifetime. So if we can get detailed photos of these taken from a distance, we can add those to a catalogue, and that enables us to identify an individual animal. Then any subsequent sightings that get sent in, we can compare that with the catalogue to see if they've been spotted before or if they're a new one. So up until the end of 2023, we had 126, thanks Sue, seals added to the catalogue. Most of them are only spotted once, so about 60% only seen once. A further 15% are seen in quick succession. So that suggests that the majority of seals are much more transient. Only about 20% have been seen over multiple years and 5% are more regular visitors. Now, these seals are also showing us just how mobile these animals are. So some of these seals you see here have been spotted in Dorset and Cornwall, in Devon, in Hampshire, and also one has come across from France. Okay, next slide. So one other way that we've been learning about seals is by setting up these remote trail cameras at a known seal haul out in Poole Harbour. So this is another sort of non-invasive technique. It allows us to just observe their natural behaviour, gives us an insight into their haul out behaviour. It shows how many seals are using the site and when they're using it. But it also allows us to see the kind of pressures that they're facing, such as disturbance from boats, kayaks, SUPs. Can help us identify any problems such as entanglement or injuries. And this is still ongoing. So next slide. So the cameras that we've got set up take a still image every 5 minutes during daylight hours. Unfortunately, we've not managed to obtain a complete data set for the entire duration that the cameras have been out due to some issues with functionality, but we've still sort of gained a really useful insight. So we know that up to 6 seals are using the haul out at a time, and there's been some interesting interactions with both common and grey seals using that haul out. We were quite surprised to see that the haul out activity increased during the summer when there was more chance of disturbance. However, that does coincide with the common seals molting season, which would make more sense as they'll be spending more time out of the water. And it should also be noted that as the cameras are only taking photos during daylight hours, there is more daylight hours in the summer, so that is probably going to influence those figures. There are some limitations with this study as well, so it only shows the behaviour at one site. They may use other haul outs. The haul out can only accommodate a limited number of seals at any one time. They're sort of influenced by the tides and the positioning of the cameras. And unfortunately, at the moment, the resolution isn't high enough to identify individuals. So a quick roundup of what happened in the past year. So we recorded 216 seal sightings along the Dorset coast, which was a slight increase on the previous year. 62% of those were grey seals and 19% common seals, and the majority of sightings were reported during sort of March and April in the spring, and then in the summer from July through to October. We added a further 17 seals to our photo ID catalogue. That was 10 grey seals and 7 common seals, and we were able to re-identify 16 seals 30 times. We do get issues that affect our seals, so disturbance is probably one of the biggest that we have here in Dorset. We don't collect disturbance data in a consistent manner at the moment, but 12% of the sightings that have been reported to us do indicate that there's been some form of disturbance or interaction with a seal. And those sort of sources of disturbance, land-based disturbance was the highest, so 31% of those were from land-based sources, followed by kayakers. And then we've also got swimmers, fishing boats, paddle boarders, coast steering groups, etc. Unfortunately, we do get sightings of dead seals as well. So we had about 10 dead seals reported last year. And the last picture is, again, just sneaking it in there, was actually from January this year. we had a small common seal pup which washed up on the Dorset coast. It was very fresh, in good body condition, but the seal itself was tagged. So we traced the tag and actually discovered that it came from the RSPCA at East Winch in Norfolk. The pup was admitted there weighing just 7 kilos back in November 2023, sorry, in July 23, and it was released in November 2023. So at only a few months of age, it would have circumnavigated the coast from the Norfolk coast right the way around to Dorset, which is a distance of approximately 400 miles. Unfortunately, the tide took the seal back out before it could be recovered. So unfortunately, no post-mortem examination on this one, but it's still fascinating to learn how far and how mobile these animals are, even at such a young age.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. That was just amazing, and how gobsmacking to know that really young harbour seal pups who are not supposed to travel as far as grey seals, how far they do actually travel. So yeah, and really great work. I simply can't believe, Sarah, you've been doing it for 10 years already. That's just amazing. Congratulations on your 10th birthday.
Thank you.
Over to Sarah Greenslade, who's going to present her own slide. So the timing might be a little bit better than it is with me. Apologies.
Okay. Have I got that right?
Wow.
Brilliant. Okie dokie. Hello, I'm Sarah from the Seal Project, which is South Devon based. I'll be honest, I haven't got the stats the same way as Sarah has, but I'll tell you a little bit about our seals, because ours are quite fascinating in different ways. If I can get it to do it, yes. So 2023 pretty much ended as it began, wet, windy, and seals don't really like the rain, as we seem to have discovered lately. When it's torrential, they disappear. So a lot of the Christmas time surveys that you think would be the best time to get out there, there wasn't a lot to see either end of 2023. However, our main survey locations, which are mostly man-made structures, are consistently used, and we see a number of the seals returning year on year, which fascinates me. This is an early morning picture in one of our harbours of a very well-known adult female called Fingers Crossed, resting with one of these beautiful juvenile females who it's the low spots they can get to. They can't necessarily leap up onto the pontoons along with the other guys, but I just thought that showed like wildlife reflected in our towns. Beautiful picture. So we too have a camera access. We've got a remote webcam that we have full access to, and we've had that for over a year now, and it's proved to be fascinating to watch. There's a set of pontoons that are often separated. There's ones for the greys and ones for the commons, because this is a river location and we do get a number of commons. The males definitely hang around pretty much all year. We don't know where the females go, but they should be heading back soon because we do get a couple of pups. But this particular female grey seal is well known coastally over the summer months, and we've monitored her pups for a few years now, but she does hang out in the river quite a lot, and we've been able to monitor her movements quite easily from home, which is fascinating. And as you can see, the pontoons are a bit of a feature in our neck of the woods. The commons and the greys do actually mix, which we find quite fascinating. And in the pictures on the right-hand side, top and bottom, you'll see there's an adult male with a bit of a pattern to his fur. And if he hauls out on a pontoon somewhere, you can almost guarantee others will haul out as well. If he says it's okay, then they'll do it wherever they seem to find a place to hang out. And they are choosing more visible locations, which, you know, brings its own set of troubles. We did have somebody say only recently that the seals are taking over. To which I had to point out, well, actually, we're taking over the coastline. We are using the coastline year round because the climate is more user friendly, and kayaks and paddleboards are easier for people to have. So we are taking over their locations, especially over pupping season. So this brings me on to our females. We only have a few that pup that we know of, and we thought we'd pretty much got them sussed. We know their behaviours, we know where, we know roughly when. So last summer, we get a call from one of the trimming boats to say, Sarah, Sammy's had a pup. You better get round here. It's a sunny day. Keep people away. And we went over. And I thought, well, I don't recognise that pattern. I don't recognise that seal. and couldn't tell from where we were, but once we got home, I realised it was actually a female we do know. This was possibly her first pregnancy. And I just love the expression on the pup here. It's like, are you my mum? Yes, because it was probably only about 24 hours old at this stage. And the easterly storms came in, and whether the pup got washed round the corner or whether she moved the seal, the pup, we don't know. But they survived some pretty brutal storms just around the corner from the beach they were on, because if she'd have stayed where she was, it probably wouldn't have had a happy ending for this seal. So she was quite fascinating to come across. But they're not all this lucky, unfortunately. Another mum we've known of, she pupped in the same location as previously, but unfortunately there were campers on the beach, and they'd arrived by boat, so they had to leave the same way. And unfortunately, even though it was called into the BDLMR and somebody did pass the phone to them, so they had a conversation with British divers, they still didn't leave the beach for a day or two. So we went round by boat and we could see they'd only just left. And unfortunately, there was a kayak company with customers on the beach at the same time, pretty much saying that they could go and do what they wanted because we hadn't posted it on social media that there was a pup to be kept away from, which was a little frustrating. But thankfully, we did then see the mum come back on the beach and feed the pup. And you might see at the top, there's a very young helper, our youngest member of the Seal Project team, my 2-year-old nephew, and that was his first outing on a boat. He's convinced he's seen a whale. It was only a dolphin, but to me, he had a priceless day. And so, yeah, youngest member of the Seal Project. And then we had a grey seal pup 7 miles inland, which I thought was fascinating and very intelligent, really. And it turns out it's a mum we know. I mean, this time of the year, I think it was November-ish, when we got the call to say there's a mum and a pup, which is often generally an amorous male and a female, but it was actually a mum and a pup, and we managed to identify her from another catalogue, which is fascinating. Private land, no heavy seas, pretty much a very clever move. Whether she'll do it again this year remains to be seen. And then we had a pup call out to a pup at Berry Head in South Devon. And we went down and I was like stunned. How could this pup be this far out of water? It was resting beautifully. It was more than happy where it was, and clearly very well fed, but clearly nowhere we could get to. So we observed it from a distance, and the Torbay Coast and Countryside Trust put up a trail cam, which was brilliant. So I got to drive down the following day, and I'll show you where we had to drive. It's not a public access, so it was a bit of a hairy ride. And when we got there, the seal pup had gone. So we did a bit of a search of the area. And unfortunately, the trail cam missed it by a matter of seconds, it would seem. But it looks like the tides must have been very, very high, and it went back out on the tide. So it was molting nicely while it was resting where it was. But yeah, that's probably the most bizarre location to find a seal, as far as I'm concerned. And common seals, we do get a number of common seals around our coastlines, mostly in the river. So my whole way of getting involved in this whole seal world was from a common seal pup nearly 8 years ago. And in the area that was in Brixham, we'd only seen 4. So this was the 4th one we've seen this year. It was quite a confident little seal. I'm not sure it was male or female, but we called this one Captain Caveman. And as you can see, he was enjoying a fantastic meal. And commons seem to be a bit of a theme here. But one of the commons that was rescued and taken to the RSPCA Centre was Bree. Now, Bree was rescued further up the coast from us. And because I've been volunteering up at RSPCA West Hatch, we kind of said, could we kind of possibly see if we could release the seal back to where it had come from? So in December, we helped with the RSPCA releasing 2 common seals back into the southwest. Bree, we haven't actually seen since, but Gnome, who was the other seal that was with it, one with the yellow tag, we have actually seen since, which is brilliant. So and because of this, we have helped release a few more. So we're hoping they're all doing fabulously. And Tangled is a beautiful female seal, and we saw her first in March 2022 with banding from a gill net around her neck. And as you can see, she's in a bit of a predicament, but she manages to be very capable. She can leap up onto pontoons, and that's pretty much where we regularly see her. So at the moment, there's not a lot we can do other than kind of monitor her movements. And she does travel a considerable distance, and she was only recently seen again. So we're just keeping our fingers crossed that one day she lets us help her. And so we've had quite a busy year last year. We attended a number of talks and presentations, and we've had a great time, really. Devon County Show is always fascinating, if hard work, and we get a lot of talks that follow through from that. But we also were very lucky to be offered a static display through the Devon Seaweed Company, who had a place at the Dartington Cider Press in Totnes. And so we benefited from that, and we did colouring competitions to help name seals. And that was a fantastic few months. And then I did a talk to the staff at the RSPCA West Hatch. You'd think they'd know everything there is to know about seals, but of course they only see them when they're young and when they're in need of help. So to actually show them a bit about our older seals and what we know it was been great. And a few of them have actually been down to see the seals in South Devon. And then we did a day at the South Devon College, the Animal Care Centre, and again that was fascinating and well represented. So Easter Bunny, he is my favourite. There's no two ways about it. And we've known him now for 4 years. And he's up and coming. We've learnt a lot from him. And we've watched him over this winter, hanging around with the new juveniles, of which we do seem to get quite a few. So he's pretty cool. And our seals do hang out on man-made structures, which, you know, that does mean they're around a lot of man-made debris. And as it's looking at this log, that's man-made because it's been cut off a tree somewhere. But I just think it's fascinating to see the way they do adapt to the surroundings they're in. And finally, we've been trying to do this for a while. We've been trying to get our Juliet, who is a preterm pup, down to show Sue, basically, down in Cornwall. And so our Juliet got to meet Sue's few-day-old Augusta. So that was at the end of last year. So we thought that was lovely. Thank you very much.
That was fantastic. Thank you very much, Sarah, and well done sticking to time. So I will mosey on. I'm just going to stop you sharing and share mine. Thank you ever so much, Sarah. That was great. And yeah, it was lovely when both of our seal skeletons were able to meet each other and show just how small and premature yours was. Okay, over to conservation actions from us. Always have to thank our funders, because without these public, private and voluntary organisations, we wouldn't be able to be self-financing to pay for the 1.5 full-time equivalent rangers. We only have 1.5 full-time paid people here. The rest of us are volunteers. Our volunteers do a range of things, which I'm sure you're aware of, and we had 252 of them doing surveys in 2023. And a highlight for me has to be going to meet King Charles III with my favourite seal chairlift in the bottom right-hand corner, who I wore on my head. I was happy to accept the MBE on behalf of the team effort at the Seal Research Trust, because it has been a huge effort. Without all those volunteers, I have nothing useful to say about seals. On my head, I had chairlift made by Smarty Lids on the Beach, Michelle Costello. He was made out of lost rope from beaches. The rocks are actually pyroplastics from burnt rope, and the waves are made out of fishing net. The very first thing the King said to me is, "What is that?" So I was off on one about unique seals and photo ID. My clothes that I was wearing, I never wear dresses, but the clothes I wore were Van Gogh Starry Night, and I explained to the King that I believe his artwork is very prophetic of the planetary turmoil we now find ourselves in terms of climate change and marine plastics. 2023 was a very busy year for SRT. We did 13 surveys every single day from 328 locations. We managed 105,000 photos, which were processed for 11,000 IDs across the team. That's why it's a massive team effort. 4 seals from 2000 were still around in 2023. Sadly, we had 81 unique entangled animals, which is quite a lot down from 2022, which was 124. However, that's not necessarily good news, because they may just have died. We had 1,362 seriously disturbed seals in 156 incidents. And on the plus side, 126 tag seals, of which we've had several referred to already, were sighted. We share all that information as widely as possible. So we did 740 activities. We had 29,000 beneficiaries. We did 95 talks or workshops between us on the team. And most importantly, input to 35 public consultations, where we're giving seals a voice in planning and development. And we wrote 27 reports. This is our annual report. If you would like a copy of it, you can just email us. I'll put the email in the chat. and these conservation actions. So 34 seals from the year 2000 to 2003 were actually still identified in 2023. But the sad news is only 6 of them are males, which is giving us the impression that actually there might be an issue for males not living as long as females. We've also started putting these stickers on photos, which shows that although our seal photos look like they're taken from close up, they're most definitely not, with massive zoom lenses following DEFRA and WISE best practice. So you'll see a lot more of those on our social media. This is Chairlift, who I've already mentioned. You can see he's been seen pretty consistently at West Cornwall. And I'm pleased to say that I've seen him on the 1st of April. It wasn't an April Fool. He was there present, keeping me happy with a big smile on my face. But this seal was my big shock in 2020. She was, after 20 years absent, she suddenly rocked up. Only ever been seen twice in 2003. And she'd had a pup. And I managed to recognise her on both sides straight away. We've put the photo across our network, and unfortunately nobody else knows her. So where has she been for 20 years? We've also had a seal who's been absent for 11 years, which is a bit of a surprise too. So where have these females been? Of all the seals that were identified, we had 126 different tag seals, which makes up 2% of our sightings. The oldest was Lewis, who was an ex-rehab rescue and release seal from the Cornish Seal Sanctuary. He was released in the Isles of Scilly in 2001 and has been sighted ever since. He seems to have defected from the north coast of Cornwall, however, to the south coast of Cornwall, although he still does make trips up to North Devon, which is fascinating. So he's a big mover. Another highlight was Ghost, our record-breaking mum, who's had 20 pups in 21 years. We're actually able to show photos of that and prove that. There is a possibility that Ropeneck from Donna Nook has actually had more pups than her, but I'm not sure that they've recorded it quite as rigorously as we have. But the good news is Nicola, our volunteer, caught her mating with Snake, her beach master, making pup 21. So if she manages to survive another year, then she will have another record-breaking pup. Issues, well, disturbance from land, sea and air is an issue. Andy will talk a lot more about that. We were delighted in May when DEFRA published their Marine and Wildlife Coastal Code, which gives us a single hymn sheet for us all to sing off in terms of how we should behave best practice around seals. We were delighted that Winterwatch shared responsibly photographing seals and watching responsible seal information. So we hugely appreciated that. I was asked to draft the seal protection parliamentary debate back in the early part of the year, which Sarah Olney presented, which was very much appreciated. We take action with statutory agencies such as Natural England. This was an illegal disturbance incident because it was in a SSSI where seals are a monitored feature. The 2 men actually walked over one beach and scat a whole load of seals off the first beach. So when they climbed over the rock band and disturbed them on the second beach, that can now be described as reckless and intentional. I went out surveying on the 1st of April and deliberately to try and see, because it was Easter Monday, how busy it was. And in 150 minutes, we had 6 seals in total haul, just 6 seals. All of the boats that visited were too close. There were 8 boat visits, one every 18 minutes, and there were 9 different boats because one visited 3 times in the hour and a half. All the boats caused a reaction. 34 seals reacted. There were only 6, remember, but we had 34 seal reactions. A seal was woken up on average, therefore, every 4.5 minutes, and on average, each seal was woken up 5 times. So we use the analogy, imagine how you'd feel the following morning if you'd been woken up every 4 to 20 minutes throughout the night. You'd probably feel pretty rotten in the morning. Seal strandings, thanks to our partners at Cornwall Wildlife Trust Marine Strandings Network. Sadly, they recorded more dead seals than ever before, 301. And worryingly, approximately half are white-coated and molted pups that were recorded dead. We actually have more seals dying in Cornwall than are being born. If you actually look at the disturbance levels, they've gone up over time. And if you look at the strandings, they've gone up over time, which has led us to speculate that because our numbers of seals on the right are relatively stable, there may actually be a link between disturbance and deaths. So that's something we need to work on because we haven't yet proven that scientifically. I'm going to leave Andy to talk about this specific case, but in terms of field engagement, we have 217 engagements in the field with over 2,000 people, including this one, and Andy will tell you about that. Flying rings is something that Dan has already mentioned, and you've seen that fabulous film of the wonderful work that British Divers Marine Life Rescue do. We do have these posters. If you want either of these to share, there is a new one on the left from 2023. Climate change. Well, I've updated this slide, so you will have seen it before, but our peak haul-out season again in 2023 proved to be January, so it is now much earlier than it used to be. And our pupping season was also earlier in 2023. Most pups born in September, followed by August. But in 2022, we had 4 more pups born in August than October. And in 2023, we had 23 born in August, more than October. So it's gone even earlier. I was very sad to see this. It's devastating when, again, on April Fool's Day, a few day old pup, devastating because it's doomed. It's not on an accessible beach. There's nothing we can do about it. It hasn't got a mother. It's just horrible to watch and heartbreaking, completely unrescuable and desperately sad. If you need any leaflets about climate change, we can provide those for free. And finally, I just want to talk about a new project that we've had on our patch, a geoengineering project, that if you get one on your patch, please contact us and tell us, because then we can help you hit the ground running with it rather than having to learn like we have. So we have a beautiful bay, and it's really important to seals right across the Celtic Sea, but we have this called a carbon dioxide removal ocean alkalinity enhancement geoengineering project, all new words to me in 2023. It's been well funded, including by the UK government, and it's modelling carbon dioxide drawdown to help with climate change rather than measuring it. And they have already sold carbon credits. Very long story short, we've written 4 letters to statutory agencies, 1 to South West Water, whose equipment is being used. We've appeared on numerous TV programmes. We've even input to the UN for one of their consultations about the experience of this case study. We've helped input about seals to the Water Research Centre independent audit about the project, provided lots of supporting evidence. We've contributed to webinars, international webinars about this, and set up a Cornwall Carbon Scrutiny Group who had the baseline results from the project presented to them on the 15th of March. That's really quite shocking. It shows that they had actually admitted they don't have a proper baseline, and the control site that they've chosen is not necessarily appropriate. I've even spoken at the White House to their federal scientific advisors who are looking to promote this kind of work, but how to best engage communities at an early stage so they can be involved in designing the science rather than being left right until the end of the project where all they can do is object. So obviously the community have been objecting, and this was last Sunday. We had a mass turnout of over 250 people protesting along with a flotilla of boats. So in summary, we've got shed loads of files about this. It's been massively stressful and a time-consuming distraction from our main seal conservation work. We needed help, advice, expertise and support, and I'm delighted to say that we got it. So please, if you get a project like this on your patch, don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help from us. We may not be able to help you, but we can surely point you at the direction of people who can. Okay, that's a summary of a wide range of conservation issues from me, and over to Andy Rogers, who's going to tell you about some more localised stuff at the Pentire Hub.
Right, good evening everybody. I'm Andy. I'm a volunteer with the Pentire Hub in Cornwall. And a few weeks ago now, I mentioned to Sue that I was putting together a photographic record of some of our surveys in the Pentire Hub during 2023. And she suggested it might be a good idea just to run through some of the highlights and the lowlights contained in that this evening. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through a number of disturbance issues we've recorded, a couple of entanglement issues, and then focus on some of the better stuff and some of the lighter things that we've recorded too. Next slide, please, Sue. Thank you. So first off, I'm going to start with 4 disturbance issues. Seals in the area face disturbance from land and sea pretty much all year round now. But these pictures here show relaxed seals hauled out on June the 3rd on a beautiful blue morning. However, the next slides show how quickly all of that can change. So 2 kayakers arrived, came around the headland unexpectedly. They were very loud. Panic ensued across the haul out. Every seal was disturbed in some way, and 8 left the rocks in panic, literally dragging themselves across the sharp rocks on the way, obviously risking the possibility of injury. But next one, please, Sue. So a picture paints 1,000 words, and from absolute calm to that picture there in just a few seconds, from sleep to panic in the blink of an eye. And you can only begin to put yourself in the position of those animals with the fear and the stress they felt as that disturbance played out in the area. Next one, please, Sue. So the second disturbance I'll just run through was due to a couple of paddleboarders that you can see there bottom left. They approached these 3 seals who were hauled out on the offshore site that we've got in the early evening. They panicked and bolted for the sea. But look at that drop in front of the 2 seals on the right-hand side. That drop is their escape route from the paddleboarders who are directly in front of them. And what happened next was a difficult watch. So as the adults landed on its neck and its jaw, I heard the slap of that impact from over 100 yards away. The juvenile then followed and landed at a horrendous angle. If you look top right, she's then scrambled over the sharp rocks in the bottom left-hand picture to escape the paddleboarders who were still literally positioned directly in front of her. So the adult probably had enough padding to avoid injury, but the juvenile could well have sustained injury in that drop and then the subsequent scramble. Next one, please, Sue. We monitor the area's tripper boats and operators very carefully, and we try to work constructively with them. But these 3 pictures here were all taken on the same day. 3 boats, all within 100 metres, within a half an hour or so of each other, all caused different levels of disturbance to what was a small haul out. So as a result of what we saw that evening, we wrote to each operator, and in total last year we wrote a total of 5 letters to 4 operators throughout the area. Encouragingly, the biggest offender is advertising carrying binoculars for all guests this season, which is a move in the right direction as far as we're concerned. But this disturbance pictured on this slide was interesting. The rib that you can see pictured charged across the bay, doing donuts in the water, full throttle, the boat's occupants sort of yelling and screaming in delight. They then stopped dead 100 metres away from the seals, as we've asked them to do. But they disturbed that seal that's pictured bottom left when they were still 150 metres away due to their bad approach. So the letter that we wrote to them is on the right-hand side. We included photographs as evidence. We sent a full description of how their behaviour is impacted on the seals and how we would like them to behave moving forward using the DEFRA and the WISE guidelines. Again, we received a positive response, and the result was, for the last sort of 6 or 7 weeks of the season, some great behaviour from the boat operators. And as you can see there, 2 of them well in excess of 100 metres from the haul out. So our monitoring and reporting, at least last year, had worked. Next one, please, Sue. Sadly, we also get a lot of disturbance at our inshore site, especially in the winter. Social media has made the seals here an attraction in their own right, and with literally hundreds of people visiting to see them some weekends, it's tough going. But these pictures here were taken on the same day. The top left shows a beautiful start to the day, a relaxed haul out, and top right shows it a couple of minutes later after the dogs pictured bottom left had ran out of control under the ropes and started barking at the seals. Next slide, please, see. So again, picture paints 1,000 words, from sleep to this in just a few seconds. And you can see the fear and distress sort of etched onto the faces of the seals there. And it was, I say again, quite a difficult watch. Next one, please, see. Right, so during our surveys, we do still record some pretty horrible entanglement cases. This one was the worst one that I saw last year, and this was on August the 31st. And as you can see, the net is cutting directly across her eye. We only ever saw her once, so we never recorded her again in the area, but that was the worst one that I saw. Next one, please, see. And these pictures here were all pictured on the beach in late 2023. The ones on the right-hand side show a hollow ring entanglement. The one on the left is a gill net entanglement on the juvenile there, which she was dragging, a lot of net behind her as well. And then on the right-hand side as well, it's what looks like a black plastic bag of some sort stuck around that seal's head. And again, we've not really seen these seals again since, so we don't know how these stories ended. Next one, please, see. Right, now, we've gone through all the miserable stuff. Let's go on to some of the good stuff that we've worked on and recorded this year. We've worked extremely well with the BDLMR. This was the very first survey in 2023. We came across a juvenile male on the main beach. We contacted Lizzie and the team, and she attended quite quickly, and the seal was discovered to be dehydrated and had a really nasty abscess on its flipper. And after review, it was taken into the seal hospital for treatment. But just an example of how we've worked with the BDLMR. Next one, please, see. This was an interesting one. This was a taggy that we also recorded in early January, and it's called Moleskin. It came surfing into the cove just as I was about to leave. Thankfully, I managed to get a half-decent picture of the tag, which is a rarity. And when it was ID'd, it became apparent that she was rescued by Gareth Richards on a South Wales beach on the 21st of the 10th, 21. And then released in Combe Martin in Devon in December the same year. I think this was the first sighting since that release, and Gareth was thrilled that she'd been seen, and he said it was great news. It was good to know that she was okay, and he looked after her in West Hatch, and she was a right diva while he was looking after her. But from my point of view, it's great to be able to add to a seal story, and a good example of some of the bits and pieces we've picked up over the year. And this particular seal was out there simply because of the dedication and hard work of those involved in a rescue and a rehab. Next one, please, see. Now, this was one of our fun highlights of the year. Kagan is one of our regular summer visitors, and you can see her there on the left-hand side of the top picture. And Kagan was jealous when the male that she had had her eye on pulled out and showed an interest in another female at the top of the rock. So, in a flash, she was out of the water. She took hold of the male's neck. She pulled, twisted, dragged, and literally rolled him back down the rock and back towards the water. Next one, please, see. And as you can see, once she's grabbed his attention, romance blossomed, and they spent 40 minutes in each other's company. And it was a really interesting encounter to actually watch and witness. Next one, please, Sue. But the highlight of the year for me was the Pentire Pup Watch. On the 9th of September, a call came through from a member of the public reporting a white coat on the inshore site. Now, that is a very, very busy area. So there's two pictures there. The first picture I took on the 9th of September, just after I'd been and seen the pup for the first time. And the second picture at the bottom was taken on the 27th of September, just before the pup left to head out to sea. And I think you'll agree that the mom has done an absolutely terrific job in preparing that pup for the tough winter ahead. But because of the location, a joint operation was launched with the BDLMR and SRT members, and we monitored the site from 8 AM till dusk to give the pup and the mom the best chance that we could. As you can see there, 35 volunteers spent 232 hours monitoring the mom and the pup, and that was across 16 days. There was concern around the number and length of feeds because the number of people visiting the area. And during the monitoring, the volunteers engaged with a staggering 832 people. Another concern was a male who did not leave the area for any time at all during the whole thing, and he frequently interrupted feeds too. and that led to some prolonged and sometimes bloody fights and standoffs as the mom stood up she stood up really well actually to his advances. But despite those challenges, the pup grew well and appears to have left the cove at the end of September fit and healthy. Next one, please, Sue. So this picture was taken on the second day of monitoring. It was one of the many encounters between the male and the female, and the male actually came off by far the worst in this encounter and actually suffered some nasty looking wounds to his neck during it too. Next one, please.
Andy. 1 minute.
Lovely. So the highlight of the year for me, and that's because we got to meet some incredible people, both volunteers and members of the public. It was a privilege to watch the pup grow and develop, and fascinating to watch the interactions with the male and the sheer strength and determination of the mom to keep him at bay. Next one, please, Sue. Finally, despite all the challenges, the seals in the area appear to be thriving. Last winter saw some record numbers hauled out. 100 seal haul outs had only been recorded 5 times previously. But during November, December and January, it became a regular occurrence last winter. This picture was taken by a member of the public, and it shows a staggering 176 seal haul out, and that's a record number to date. We're only a small hub. We've got James, Cam, Peter and myself surveying, and Kate and Mate carry out the difficult bits with the IDs and album work. So massive thanks to them for all their hard work. Well, that's it from me. Thank you for listening.
That was wonderful. Thank you very much. And it's a much more in-depth and detailed study of what the kind of work that we do. So very proud of that. Well done, Andy. Thank you very much. Over to you, Kate Williams, heading up to North Devon, beautiful North Devon.
Hello, I'm Kate, and although I live in Cornwall, I look after the recording and photo ID for the North Devon SEAL team. The photo identification project at this North Devon location has been running since 2010. The key surveyor until 2022 was Dave Jenkins, to whom we're extremely grateful for gathering so much data and continuing to do so even when we were not managed to analyse it for him. At the end of 2022, Dave decided it was time to retire, and he recruited a new team of surveyors to continue recording and photographing the seals. So the project is a photo identification project. Lots of my colleagues have already talked about photo identification. I'm going to explain a little bit more about it. Next slide, please, Sue. So the survey effort in 2023, the new team did a fantastic job covering the year well. The site can be slippery after rain, so we did get a couple of gaps, but the summer months, when most of the seals visits were well surveyed. Next slide, Sue. The seals weren't seen hauling out until the start of June, despite the team trying to survey at low tide. This was unusual. They usually start hauling out in April, but we couldn't see any particular reason why they started so much later. The numbers increased through June and July, peaking at 24 on the 9th of August. Counts in the summer months could be quite variable, sometimes double figures, sometimes single. Counts were more consistently double figures throughout September and up to mid-October. In previous years, the numbers have dropped through most of September and then increased again in October. Next slide, Sue. It can be a busy location, and the team tried hard to pass on advice about giving the seals space and how important it was to allow them to rest. The team tried to set a good example by staying back and surveying from a good distance. This may have resulted in fewer identifications, but it seemed to be the best thing to do. Next slide, Sue. So we had a big success. The National Trust put up some signs. The headland is grazed by cattle and sometimes sheep, and there had been some disturbance instances with the livestock. So the National Trust decided to put up signs asking people to keep their dogs under control and on leads. And we were delighted that they added our Give Seals Space poster to the bottom of the signs. They just advise people that seals need to be viewed from a distance and left in peace and quiet. So we were quite pleased with that result. Next slide. So I analysed the seals. The survey team recorded the seals from a distance using zoom lenses, and the photos were analysed to record the age and sex of the seals. In 2023, we had almost exactly the same result as all the previous years that have been analysed, proving that this site remains an important rest location for pregnant breeding females in the summer months. Next slide, please. Then the photos are used to identify individual seals from our catalogue photos taken at the same site. We made over 343 re-identifications during the year. 101 unique seals were identified. 64 of these were already in the catalogue, meaning that they'd been seen at the same site before, they were returners. And you might remember that the maximum count on any one survey was 24, but this photo identification proves that this site is important to more than just 24 seals. The photo ID of seals has been seen and recorded tells us that the seals are regularly using the site year on year, and the analysis of age and sex shows us that it's an important resting site for pregnant adult female seals. And this was just an example to show you an example of how photo ID works. This is one of our regular seals. You can see that we can identify from both sides because of the patterns. She was first recorded in 2011 and has been recorded every year since then. She has a smiling monster face on her left-hand side of her neck and a mortarboard T-shape on the right. But, next slide. This is how she looked all of 2023. Made her a little hard to identify. She had a strange molting pelt, and it seemed to last all year, but if you look really carefully, you can still just see her identification pattern. And of course, once we realised we were looking for a multi-seal with this pattern, it was a little bit easier to find her. Next slide, Sue. This is her visit pattern. You can see she's a regular at the North Devon site. She's also been recorded further west in North Cornwall, one of the very large winter haul-out sites there. But we may have had, she did seem to appear less in 2023, but that might have been because we found it harder to identify her. Next slide, thank you. As I said earlier, the counts were consistently double figures throughout September and up to mid-October, so I thought I'd have a closer look at the numbers. In previous years, numbers had dropped off in September. This appeared to be mums leaving to have their pups and returning looking thin in October. So the consistency of the counts through September was unusual and also a little surprising, as pupping seems to be creeping earlier in the year in Cornwall. So we might have thought that the numbers would have dropped earlier. The photo identification enabled me to have a closer look at which females were recorded and identified in September. But there didn't seem to be anything unusual, except that I added 11 new seals to the catalogue, suggesting we had extra pregnant females resting up before moving away to pup. Next slide, Sue. This was one of the highlights of the year. It might seem slightly odd, but we don't see very many males at the site. So when this chap turned up and stayed around, it was nice because all the team got to see him and were able to then identify the male as opposed to the females, which was good for them as they were a new team, and it was quite good fun. And we did find out that he'd been identified in West Cornwall. Next slide, Sue. So this is his calendar. And this is his appearance in 2023. He had also already been in our catalogue from back in 2020, and he has spent the winters in West Cornwall. So quite an interesting tie-up. This seal's a favourite with the team. This is Scarf. This is her when she returned early October. She was very thin. Next slide. And this is Gru by comparison in early October, still looking very fat. So we did have a mixture of pregnant females and females that had their pups. Anyway, Scarf is interesting and a particular favourite of the team because she was rescued as a white coat pup and taken to West Hatch in 2010. So we know how old she is. She was released in North Devon, but she must have got herself entangled and managed to free herself as she carries the scar around her neck. That's her scarf. But she's been recorded and identified in West Cornwall, and then she started appearing in the North Devon records. Next slide, Sue. This is her calendar. You can see we see her quite a lot, and she's slightly easier to photo identify because having the entablement scar makes her a subgroup of all the catalogue seals. So it's lovely to see her. She was recorded in West Cornwall. Sorry, Sue, could you go back? So the pale blue colours are when she's been recorded in West Cornwall. The sort of pale numbers in the centre all through the summer is when she's recorded in North Devon. And then the darker blue are where she's started to sneak into a different site. She seems to have changed her pattern, and she's been turning up at Andy's site at Pentyre, which is an absolute delight because I do the photo identification for that site as well. So spotting her has been a real treat for me. So I tried to have a little closer look at the days that she spent away from North Devon. And in 2023, down the right-hand side, we reckon that she had 38 days away from North Devon, which is long enough to raise a pup. So we suspect that perhaps she did have her pup in West Cornwall, but we still haven't found out where. Then she went back to North Devon, and then she went back to West Cornwall again. And I think the last slide, Sue, is her having her winter rest on Andy's site at Pentyre, in amongst all these 122 other seals. Quite a few more than she normally encounters in North Devon, but it was just great to see her. And she's now back in North Devon. We've already seen her this year, so we know that she's okay and doing well. So thank you to the North Devon SEAL team for their great work this year, and to Dave Jenkins, and thank you to you all for listening.
Thanks ever so much. Oh, thank you. Apologies, everyone. I'm having trouble with my unmute button. Anyway, thanks everybody for all their fantastic talks. Kate, that was just brilliant and added an extra depth to the photo ID stuff that we do. I know we're running a little bit later than we were hoping to, but I'm just going to run through a couple of resources that we've got if you're interested. We have brand new Enjoy, Respect, Protect A3 leaflets, which have this information, reasons why seals need us to behave in a best practice way, and then best practice advice for each different user group. So if you would like free copies, all you need to do is email us. We have a schools competition based on that leaflet, asking people to do something creative with any of the information from that leaflet, and then they can enter our competition. All entries get something back. We have paddle sport stickers on the left and boat stickers on the right. If you would like any free copies of those as well, you can ask for a large number. If you have a group, for example, that you know you can share them with, just get in touch for sure. And then this is our graphic about our photo policy, where we aim to demonstrate to people that actually all our photos are taken from distance following best practice, and these are some reasons why. And then adding this sticker with our latest kind of strategy to try and communicate that message. If you'd like a copy of that, we can send that to you. So you can ask for resources, you can support that Flying Ring campaign. We really need to get to 100,000 signatures on that. And as Dan said, we've got a lot in the first week. And if you'd like to learn more, we run courses for the Seal Field Studies Council. Seal Field Skills to Inform Conservation is the new one that started in 2023. Both are running twice this year. The first course is Biology, Ecology, Species ID and Conservation. The second one, Surveying, Recording, Influencing Decision Making and Photo IDing. I mentioned about the National Water Users Talk on the 14th of March. You can just email us to get a link. And that's 7 wonders, 7 seals and 7 ways you can help. And if you happen to find your way to West Cornwall this summer, we've got an exhibition with Kurt Jackson's gallery. He's done a whole exhibition of seal paintings inspired by seals for you to go and have a look at, and our exhibition is upstairs. Right, I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to be happy to take questions. If you need to go at 7:30, that's completely fine. If you would like to stay and listen to questions and answers for a few minutes later than that, I'm sure everyone will be okay to do that for you. And thank you very much to all of you for turning up. I think our seals are very, very lucky to have this incredible network of people looking after them. Unfortunately, the seals are totally oblivious to all the hard work that our volunteers put into protecting them. Wings proved this year that she is a much better conservationist than the rest of her. us, as her video of the rescue went viral with over 1 million hits on just our local radio station's social media. So she got the message out there much better than we can, but we would rather that she hadn't been flying ringed. And all of this contributes a huge amount of evidence, and it is evidence that you need to have effective conservation actions. So well done to the entire team. Thank you for turning up, and I'll head over to Lauren, who's going to ask us some questions.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sue, and thank you, everybody. That was fantastic. So we've got a few questions in the chat. If anybody else has any questions, please do write them down into the chat. Please make sure you write which speaker your question is for, and then we can direct it to the right person. So first one is for Sarah Hodgson, Sue and Kate, which is, do you use any software to identify the seals for your photo ID?
Shall I take that one? So it's work in progress, but actually no, we do manual photo ID at the moment. One of the benefits of that is that people get to know their own seals and they become more emotionally connected to them, and that makes conservation more effective. The second reason is at the moment we haven't found any photo ID software that will actually work faster than our brains. What we're hoping is to develop some photo ID software that will enable us to identify those that we can't ID, or even worse, those ones we know and we still can't find them in our catalogues, or to make better connections between catalogues, which, as you can see, we already do. So it's work in progress, but no, at the moment we're doing it completely manually. Does anyone, Kate, do you want to add anything to that?
I was just going to say we're currently working with Oxford University on trying to move this forward, but it's quite a lot of work just to get to teach the software to identify stuff. You have to input a load of photos, and but we're starting on it.
We have actually managed to get a bespoke bit of software from a guy from the University of Bristol who has helped us process the photos, hasn't he, Kate? So basically what it does, it's called Seal Detector, and it draws a box around every seal in a photo and then crops it and exports it automatically. So we've started to use that, and that's speeded up our process quite a lot. So if you're interested in that, get in touch. Thank you. Great question.
Okay, next one. Is it possible to have a look at the letter that was sent out to boat operators? Because it would be worth noting as it was a positive outcome. Would it be possible to have a copy of that?
So absolutely, yes. You can get in touch with us via seals@cornwallsealgroup.co.uk. We have a Facebook workplace shared space for our conservation work, and we always share the letters and the wording and the tone and the approach on that closed area, because it's vital to get all those three things right: the words, the tone and the approach. And then we put the responses so we can see which ones don't work so well and which ones do work so well. We obviously appreciate that we can't win everyone over to our thoughts. Everyone's available to have their own thoughts about things, but nevertheless, you know, we do share those best words that do work. So yeah, just email us and we'll be happy to share them. What we generally don't do, and I've slipped up on this particular occasion, is we generally don't share the names of people that we're approaching or the specific sensitive seal sites. So that's something that we don't put in the public domain because we just don't want to drive up disturbance. But yeah, happy to share those, of course.
Brilliant. We've got another one that just points out, can we have positive feedback too for boat skippers, because it's good to inspire other boat skippers with best practice?
Yes. Andy, do you want to say anything about that?
What I would say is what we witness is some absolutely terrific and superb behaviour from boat skippers regularly. So yeah, you have to take the rough with the smooth. We do see some absolutely terrific behaviour on a regular basis, but that doesn't deflect from the poor behaviour that we see from a minority who do tend to give everybody a bad name, unfortunately. But we see some absolutely brilliant behaviour too.
And we do communicate that to them as well, because it's much better to catch anyone, not just an operator, but anyone, catch them being good. and tell them what they did that was good. That's the most important thing that we can actually do, is reinforce the good and then say suggested improvements for next time. And when we had a meeting with the St Ives Bay operators, we were able to say, you're all doing these 5 things. These are the things that we need to work at. And you get a much better response when you catch them being good.
Lovely. The next one is, how do you engage with local communities and stakeholders to raise awareness about seal conservation issues? So maybe Sue, you want to take that one first.
Yeah, that's a big challenge, but I think Andy's probably got some useful stuff to say about that as well. It's a challenge, but it's about being open and friendly and approaching, you know, advertising, publicity. If you're doing an event, publicity is the key, isn't it? Then getting people in the room together, and then not having a dictatorial approach and having a very open dialogue about what the situation is, where we're trying to get to, and how we can potentially get there together. You only get conservation effective if you get other people's ideas about solutions, because we're not operators, we're not paddlers, particularly all the time. So we actually don't know the best way to have solutions. We need to actually listen to stakeholders and work with them to try and engage them. I'd say we've had some very, very positive engagements. The practice isn't where it needs to be. When DEFRA released their Marine and Coastal Wildlife Code, they set a very high bar, which actually our wildlife really needs, because it's now squashed into smaller and smaller marginal spaces. But we have a long way to go to reach best practice right up to that DEFRA thing. And that's what we're working at, really, is trying to encourage that. Anybody want to add anything? Because you've all got good ideas about this. Sarah, I don't know, Andy. Okay. So yeah, get people together in a room, have a chat with them, listen to their ideas, don't be dictatorial, make it a two-way street, and agree a sensible, realistic way forward. You can't get to the right point straight away. You have to make it work in progress and make it incremental. That would be my advice.
Brilliant. So we've got a question from John Bunker that just says that he'd be grateful to get some more leaflets to hand out at Dorset BDMLR call-outs. Sarah Hodgson, do you have a stash of those that can be collected?
Yes, I do. Yeah, John, if you want to get in touch, then you can collect some from me at Chesil. I'm sure you're going to be in the area.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. Next question is, oh, interesting one. What are the directions and legal threats for scuba divers attempting to drive commercial seal dives, similar to that in France? I don't know who that's directed towards.
Sorry, could you just repeat that one?
What are the directions and legal threats for scuba divers, people attempting to drive commercial seal dives?
Okay, so I worry about legal threats. At the moment, seal disturbance is not illegal. And we do have some areas, these SSSIs in Cornwall, where it is a criminal offence to disturb a seal, but that's still work in progress. And our last resort anyway is always, you know, to engage first and use the legal strategies last. Therefore, the people who really did know and decided that they would do it anyway. There are people who disagree with us about best practice, and there are places where that does happen. And as I say, it's a free country, everybody's allowed to their own opinion. But, you know, having seen what Andy's seen and what we see on a regular basis about that sudden woke up, scared stiff in the sea, looking really stressed. And also that concept of being woken up small scale every 4 to 20 minutes through a night is really, it's low level, it's not really obvious, it doesn't look really bad, but it's chronic. And if any of you, and I'm sure you have suffered chronic stress in your life, you know that it definitely impacts your health and well-being. And the same must be for seals. So I think it's just trying that friendly, persuasive process, talking about the fact that the sea is a seal's last refuge from us. It's the place where they really can escape from us. And the more we go in the water, the more we're making it less of a refuge and less of a resting place. So we need to be massively respectful. Our advice for divers is on that leaflet that I showed you, and it is that you don't put people in the water within 200 meters of a hauled seal. So you stay even further away if you're putting people in the water, because the last thing you want to do is that person in the water drag a seal off a haul out. Drag is not the right word, but even leave the haul out through curiosity or through scaredness to come and find out what you are. What we don't want to do is seals to leave the land and go in the sea because they're wasting energy when they should have stayed out until the next high tide washed them off. So we ask people to extra distance before they put anyone in the water. If they go in the water, then if seals approach them, that's a whole different ball game, but they try not to engage with them, because what we don't want to do is encourage that interactive behavior that seals can get habituated to. And, you know, try and leave calmly, quietly and slowly. I think that's the best thing we can do. And please, please don't propagate the culture of selfies. That's something we really discourage. You know, a flipper in a photo with a seal shows exactly how close it was to the person, and that's really not helpful, because other people will try and replicate that, and that's really not helpful to the species. Does anyone else want to add anything to that? Kate, go for it.
The other thing that I learned when dealing with some of the boats up in North Devon was that people didn't realise that seals sleep underwater. So the divers are going down, finding a seal sound asleep in the weed and going and having a look. It's exactly the same as disturbing it off a haul out. It's woken it up and now it's changed its behaviour. So I think passing on wider messages, and not just disturbance on the land, but disturbance in the water is important. And the chap who was running the dives from his boat was really interested in this, and he changed his pre-dive briefing quite a lot after he'd spoken to us, because there were some things even he hadn't quite accepted, I think is more the word, that yeah, they're disturbing the seals in the water, they're changing their behaviour.
And the other thing, of course, is the animals who are going to be most curious about people in the water are going to be the juveniles, especially those young juveniles who are the molted pups under 2 years old. They're going to interact, and those are the ones that are the most riskiest time of their life, when they have that really delicate energy balance where every calorie counts and can make the difference between life and death. And those are the ones that are going to interact, and those are the ones that are wasting the energy, and those are the ones that are likely to suffer potentially fatally as a result of disturbance.
Okay, we've got two more very quick questions. Do you have a template letter to give out to shops which still sell flying rings around the coast?
Oh yes, there is. We have lots of our volunteers sending them out. I've put that email, seals@cornwallsealgroup.co.uk, in the chat. So please do write it down or copy it out of the chat and get in touch, and we will send you a link to a Google Drive folder with lots of resources, with the posters, with the letters, with the links to the petition, with photos that you can use. You can customize the letters. All we ask really is to think about using the same tone and the same approach. And of course, actually, if you find a retailer selling solid discs, it's even better to say to the retailer, it's brilliant that you're selling solid discs, because these are not a risk to seals or other marine life. So catch the retailers being good as well and say, it's great that you're selling the solid discs.
Great. And then final question is for Sarah Hodgson. You had a bimodal distribution of sightings in one of your slides. Were both species represented in each peak, or was there a separation of species?
No, that does show both species, John. So yeah, if there's anything in particular that you'd be interested to learn, I can definitely show you a breakdown of that. If you want to get in touch with us at Dorset Wildlife Trust, then I can share that data with you if that would be useful.
Interestingly, Sarah, and I was going to say this after your talk, we have by whatever they're called, two-peaked distributions of our seals at some of our sites, Loo being one of them. And we get a slight peak in the spring and we get a big peak in the summer, and then it drops off quite substantially in the winter. Although over the more recent years, we've had more in the winter as well, because we've been getting more juveniles. I would say about, obviously Andy's site is a site where things are increasing. My site is a site which is decreasing, and we've got the North Cornwall site where seal numbers are decreasing, and we seem to be having this shift from the north coast round to the west and down to the south coast. So something is happening to drive and empty some of the bigger sites and get seals to start utilising more of the smaller sites, which is interesting, bit concerning, don't know what's going on, what's the reason behind it all, etc. So, you know, we've been doing this for 20 years and we've still got an awful lot more to learn, and now things are changing, which makes it even more complicated with even more things to learn.
That's all of our questions. I'll just mention that Dan's just said in the chat that the petition's gone up by over 30 more signatures since the webinar started. So thank you very much, everybody, and that you're all welcome to share the link anywhere and everywhere, and keep an eye out for social media posts, which you can share. Some have posted already, other groups are posting soon, so keep an eye out for that. And I'll just say thank you to all of our speakers. Thank you to everybody for coming. This session has been recorded and it will be made available on the South West Marine Ecosystems YouTube channel. So you can watch it all back again, and you can watch all of the other brilliant presentations that we've been having over the last few weeks. And I'll just leave it to you, Sue, if you just want to say final word.
Thank you to everyone for coming and listening about seals. It's just wonderful that we've got so many interested people who are willing to give up their evening to do that. So thank you very much. If you want to learn any more about any aspect of it, please just do get in touch. And if you want to write how we could improve this session for next year, we'd be happy to hear that in the chat. If you want to put something else in the chat, please do so. We'll be here for another few minutes.
Brilliant.
Bye,
Thank you everyone for coming.
Enjoy your evening.